The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Hi Rogers, can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digital.
Hey Teddy, have you noticed how little attention science and health issues get in the media?
Totally, Edgar, yet science information is very important.
Yeah, for sure. That's why the Health Journalists Network is here.
How can they help?
They are a group of journalists dedicated to advancing public understanding of healthcare issues through impactful reporting on health and science.
Oh, really?
Yes, they meet up every month with scientists and researchers, policymakers, and activists at the science media cafes. They then relay what they discuss to the public.
Does that benefit us?
Oh yes, very much so. This helps with health and science literacy for a healthy Ugandan society.
Okay. I love getting informed about science and health issues. Health information makes all the difference between life and death. I'll look them up and engage them.
That's great. They are based all over the country.
Oh, okay. That's interesting, and they should be making real impact.
They are empowering health communities through journalism. Journalists can save lives just like doctors.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
I trust that it's a good evening to all our viewers. My name is Norman Tomhimbise, and every Monday around this time, we mean 7 p.m. East African time. I'm not so certain about some other time zones, but of course, so as long as it's online, I trust that you watch us on our social media handles. On Facebook, we stream live on the Alternative Uganda, also Digitalk TV, on YouTube, the Alternative Uganda. Hotline is the show tonight, and I have our panelists. That's retired Major Awich Pola, who is the Director, External Affairs in NRM. Also, in the middle today, we have the presidential aspirant. I want to address her, I think, by title council, Yvonne Mpambara, and also the extreme left is Mr. Ochieno Joseph. He has seen it all, I want to say. In fact, as we speak, he's from court. He has his issues with the UPC. So, but of course, as we move along, he will share with the rest of us what transpired in court today. And then we can have the rest of the discussion. Tonight, we are trying to interrogate the performance and or whether the national constitution as made in 1995 and was made very official on the 8th day, October 1995. By next month, same date, 8th October, it will have made 30 full years. The key highlights include, among others, that now with the late James Wapakabulo at then International Conference Center, apparently it's the Serena, he handed over the Uganda Constitution with 288 articles. By 2017, 65 and all articles had been removed, amended, repealed, if I should use the legal term, or otherwise. By now, we have had the Constitution amended 4 times. In 2000, 2005, 2017, 2018. Key amendments. What is kind of tricky and or interesting is that most of the amendments have been, I will mention the 2005 amendment, where where Article 105 that safeguarded the term limits was removed. But what is very important to remember is that parliamentarians at a time were given 5 million shillings. If I would use I wouldn't want to use it like an analogy. They were given 5 million to enable their rubber, to come and rub and or delete the Article 105 and to make the to remove the term limits. 2017, Article 102B couldn't survive, and that was dealing with the age limit. And so many other amendments. But of course, it's also fair enough to share the fact that Uganda has had 4 renowned or official constitutions. We have the 1962 Constitution, we had the 1966 Constitution, what many term as the Pigeonhole Constitution, which was solely drafted by the Queen's Chancellor, Godfrey Lukongwa Binayisa. It was given the name, the title, the Pigeonhole, of course, to bring out the picture that every parliamentarian has what we would call like a mailbox, which is called a pigeonhole. So everywhere you have any information, you go and deposit it in such an MP's deposit box at Parliament. So no sooner had Godfrey Lukongwa Binayisa completed the draft, it is not just believed, it is factual. Odoi'S government sent a copy of that constitution to every parliamentarian's pigeonhole, that deposit box. So in the morning, every MP found the constitution there. It hadn't been debated nor discussed by any person, but it was there. That's what. But of course, I have with us a panelist at the extreme left, Mr. Joseph Ochieno. I don't know whether he has anything to contest on whether his darling, the late Milton Obote, was right or otherwise by the time. But we shall reach there, please. No. You're taking my mandate. Remember the other discussion with the mandate. Anyhow, let's begin with Honorable Wichpola. Say hello to our viewers. Honorable Wich, say hello to our viewers.
Our viewers, good evening. Always nice to be with you.
It's unique. Anyway, you have heard from him very specific.
No, man, remember I answer what you ask me.
Pambara, say hello. Yeah, sure. He has even secured the studios, not just the future. Pambara, say hello to our viewers.
Hello, everyone who has tuned in today. It's lovely to be here today. My name is Yvonne Mpambara. I am a social justice lawyer. I'm also an activist, famously referred to as Madam President. I am coming for the top seat, but in general, I'm happy to be here to discuss such a key discussion and debate that I'm sure is very timely.
Your seniors, the two gentlemen, you had better have your CVs with her by the time she lives here. You never know, he could be now an ambassador or a minister for foreign affairs, because that's the docket he's in. Mr. Otieno, say hello to our viewers, sir.
I just want to say that I'm delighted actually to have Yvonne. And Yvonne is not in the middle. She's at the center of the parliament. So
Okay.
she's the center lady today. And so, very exciting that fantastic young citizens of this country can choose that they want to take the matters of this country slightly much more seriously than usually they do, particularly younger ladies, and that they want to take it an extra step by seeking to challenge for the various offices directly for themselves, instead of waiting to be appointed, which sometimes is rather business of patronage, for which in many cases women terribly suffer from the highest offices to the lowest offices. And as a feminist, I'm delighted that she's extremely to my right.
Okay, thank you. Our viewers, in our studios, we have two presidential candidates. So in the event that one of them takes charge, Honorable which Paul and myself may tap into the opportunities to become serving ministers in any of the regimes of the governments. Anyhow,
But I can also lead the opposition.
in the event that one of them is in charge, you are likely to become another Shaguna
Leader of opposition.
So long as you don't go to the bush.
Okay. You have had our preamble about the Constitution. I do not know whether, if you don't mind, I would. I moved along with the Constitution here, and what is very interesting for me and the rest of the viewers, I think, would be the preamble, which is very precise. And 1995 Constitution, as amended, and it states, "We, the people of Uganda, recalling our history, which has been characterized by political and constitutional instability." And we need to also highlight such words. It's been characterized by political and constitutional instability. Recognizing our struggles against the forces of tyranny, oppression, and exploitation. Committed to building a better future by establishing a socio-economic and political order through a popular and durable national constitution based on the principles of unity, peace, equality, democracy, freedom, social justice, and progress. Exercising our sovereign and inalienable right to determine the form of governance for our country, and having fully participated in the constitution-making process. Noting that a constituent assembly was established to represent us, to debate and draft the constitution prepared by the Uganda Constitutional Commission, and to adopt and enact a constitution for Uganda, do hereby, in and through this constituent assembly, solemnly adopt and enact and give to ourselves and our posterity this Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. This is now literally signed or approved, for lack of another word, this day, 22nd September 1995. Honorable Which, I want to highlight these specific words. Forces of tyranny, oppression and exploitation. How is UPDF performing 30 years later? And then we shall proceed from there, sir. Because we would want to go a word by word. We have some bit of time here, and then we shall proceed. That's the preamble, sir. And you are a lawyer. How are you proceeding?
Say the question again.
How, I'm trying to refer to the statement here, recognizing our struggles against the forces of tyranny, oppression, and exploitation. And I want to highlight the forces of tyranny. on whether or not UPDF and the rest of the armed forces are different from what Ugandans mentioned here. Shall we proceed, sir?
Okay, I really wanted to be specific on the question that you asked. I would have said UPDF is doing wonderful, and I stopped there and I passed the microphone.
That practice, okay.
So, but let me be
Discuss,
flexible
like
a
they
bit.
say.
I just want to say that it is true. On the 8th of October, the Constitution came in place. It was actually launched in Fort Fota, in that bomber ground of Fort Fota. And what's interesting, since I have to be flexible, is that in many jurisdictions, if a new constitution is coming like tomorrow, or a law, there's some unwritten law called the midnight law. Do you know the midnight law?
Not really.
The midnight law means if the constitution is coming tomorrow and there are some tough procedures or tight procedures by the president the next day, like appointment, he appoints today. For example, American presidents use midnight law so much. Before Clinton hands over power, make sure to, before midnight. I think one example I can cite in this constitution, the midnight law which applied, was appointment of the DPP, Butera, who has retired as Deputy Chief Justice. Because the appointment of a Deputy Chief Justice, or a DPP under the constitution is so tough, you have to go to parliament, you have to be approved, you have to do that. The other constitution didn't demand that. So Butera is a beneficiary of the midnight law. So before Fort Fortal the next day, Butera was appointed DPP this year.
So that the new constitution finds
So,
in place.
so that the new constitution doesn't tie the answer. So that is what is, maybe my viewers need to learn that or know that. So when before a constitution comes, there's what you call the midnight law. Some people do it. You can choose, it is discretional. You can choose to make the appointment the next day, but under the new constitution. But if you really feel the urgency and you don't want to be taken through, really appoint today. So that by the time the constitution comes, they'll say, this man was already appointed under midnight law. So the constitution came, and your specific question is about the UPDF performance vis-a-vis the comparison of the Thai rally. Lately,
or the alleged.
Lately, no, it is true. And this is a point of conflict we have had with the Congress for a long time. And Congress forgets that the bulk of the then UNLA comes from my area. So I've had stories and people told me, some I even managed to see. So I think in Tororo there were not mass recruitment. Actually in our area it was like nearly every homestead had contributed a soldier. So we know what it is now. It is indeed an acceptable fact that UPDF or NRA first of all gave a human face to the army. The army didn't have a human face at all. Come on, we can cite many examples. Remember in the past at a roadblock, the army would say, identican kwa mkono moja, pesa kwa mkono moja. And people would line up at a roadblock with money on one hand and identity card on one hand. And the army would collect openly. Looting was a common thing by the state. Looting, at times even iron seats. Soldiers would behave like court brokers. They would enforce court order. Do you get soldiers? They come and extract thing and do it. So, lately we have had issues with UPDF, mentioned in papers and media about attempt to interfere with the electoral process in the guise of, or in the process of crowd control, which normally crowd control should be the work of the police. But unfortunately in our law, they say the police can call on the army to support, and that is a window through which the army has been going. Also, the threats, the terrorist threat or other, what makes the army get in there. But by far, before this complaint came, Norman, I can assure you, if there were two roadblocks, one side by Uganda police roadblock here, and one side by UPDF or NRA here, and you ask a civilian in the middle, do you want to pass this roadblock of police or of the army? They would choose that of the army. And that was a perfect time. Maybe we are saying amidst these complaints, we have to sit back as a ruling party, because as a ruling party, we have a say over the army. For example, for a long time, you have seen sometime, one of the core manifesto of President Museveni was modernization of the army, meaning that we can't divorce ourselves from what happens in the army, because we can put it in our manifesto, and when we have voted, we can say we are even retrenching the army, reducing the size. If it is a matter of a manifesto, and when the people buy a manifesto, which is a social contract, we can restructure the army, because we have to act on the mandate of the people. So, at some point, President Museveni had it in manifesto, modernizing the army. So by far, compared to the past armies, UPDF has done well. Remember even the rejection of Swahili in the Ugandan community compared to Tanzania and Uganda. Rejection was because the army was using Swahili. So whoever would speak Swahili would pronounce death. You know, the army. So in line with the constitutional provisions, the army has done extremely well in as far as past armies are concerned. It has brought a human face to the military. However, we don't go and sketch of criticisms, and I'm saying we really, really have to address those criticisms. If we had done that, knowing the common saying that we sleep at night, would be winning 95% and give 5% to congressman.
Maybe if I could give you this before I cross to Mpambara. Don't you think it would be, okay, let me rephrase the question. Would you rather compare UPDF to UNLA rather than comparing UPDF to the rest of the armies in the world? Because for some reason, one would perhaps think that, okay, if it's about UNLA, or it's Army UD, or it's fair. But what about the question now that UPDF vis-a-vis other armies in the world?
Back to me?
Yeah, sure.
Of course, there's no harm in comparing it. And at international forum, we have staged our international show in many peacekeeping operations, in many other interventions that we have done outside the jurisdiction of Uganda. We have also done comparative analysis in terms of discipline. I think we have the strictest code of conduct ever. And for a long time, our code of conduct actually were operationalized by firing squad. Imagine you're not putting civilian on firing squad, but we're putting soldiers on firing squad. So our laws, our code of conduct was so strict until even the same European or even Americans started crying that we are being so harsh because we're putting soldiers on firing squad. So at international comparison, knowing the peacekeeping that we have been involved, knowing the other, remember in Somali, it's not only Uganda. In Somali, you have other armies, and we have done in many other places, including Congo, the other armies. We have been involved in many inter-forces operations where many forces are involved, and our performance has been stellar, both in combat and discipline. And again, in those areas, I can assure you, if you ask civilian which side of the roadblock to pass, and you tell them there's UPDF this way and another, they'll choose going through UPDF.
I want okay, but I think maybe in a few seconds before I goes to Yvonne, you mentioned the Congo, and what came to my mind straight away was about the back in the day of Kazin and the rest, Ikondere and others, and of course when the report came back, I know that all of us ought to pay some bit of a debt about the thuggery and looting done by your own army that you're praising as of now. Having said that, it is it did wonders. I don't know whether you want to respond to something or you want to call it an isolated.
The accusation in Congo was not an accusation against the army looting. It was an accusation against Uganda. You may wish to know that there were civilians. Civilians.
Like what Tafile? Isn't a civilian? Because he was, he's one of the people mentioned.
Take it this way. There were civilians who took the advantage of the spaces UPDF was operating to do illegal business. That is at least according to court record. It wasn't Captain so-and-so, Corporal so-and-so. No, not the army. It was Uganda who who was
But they would mention Ugandan generals involved in illegal importation of, timber.
You would have seen targeted sanctions. Targeted sanction is sanction against individuals as opposed to sanctions against the country. So I know of civilians who were victims of targeted sanctions because they were cited. Now, again, Congo, the issue was not, because to me what I am valuing the quality of the army is more into military-civil relationship in as far as human rights violations is concerned. The bulk of what was contained in the accusation of Ugandans taking advantage of a space of operation is another. But here I mean you have cases of rape, cases of murder, cases of torture. That is what I'm addressing. That in as far as civil-military relationship, we are superb. We are superb in those key areas. I'm talking of rape, torture,
robbery,
killing, robbery. Interpersonal relationships, civil-military relationship, we are perfect. But as far as our civilians take advantage of the space and attempt to do businesses that end up making the country liable. That is another thing. And in fact, sometimes the army gets embarrassed, said, we have fought, we have liberated the area. Just for these people at the background to do it.
People are taking advantage of the peace you have created.
People are taking advantage because you have captured an area and then you do it. But that one, you don't put it at the doorstep of the army.
While Honorable Awich made his submissions, there is that eye from the Congress of the People. But of course, we shall reach there. No, I think no. Anyway, Yvonne, he mentioned civilians, and you belong to civilians, and you belong to the other generation that Honorable Awich Pola. I don't want to use the word allege, but for purposes of the show, just take it on. Honorable Awich Pola and others claim to have liberated you in particular, your generation. And we're trying to break down a word per word in the preamble, because by next month 8th, it's going to be 30 years ever since we had this mother law. What is your assessment about the army on whether it's one-on-one or through media or reading any articles? Assess tyranny, oppression, and exploitation.
Well, to begin with, I'm astounded by how many times the ruling junta refers back to the times where most of us were not even there. Majority keep referring back to times before most of us were actually here on this soil in Uganda. And I'm starting to wonder how we compare progress compared to several other leaders who were there before, especially in older times. Majority of the time, they will compare it to Obote's rule, they will compare it to Amin, but they've been in power for 40 years. 40 years is a long time to still be comparing the rule to other leaderships, because in between that time, we should have had about how many presidents?
If we were to
3
go
to 4. If we're going
by 2 terms, for instance.
By proper democracy in a country, we'd be having about 3 to 4 presidents, right? But we are constantly, honestly, taking back to the times when there were other ruling presidents, when there was almost no rule of law, when there was almost no, and for majority of us, it's very hard to relate. It's very hard to relate because what we are seeing is the right now. What we are seeing is the 40 years of NRM, what has happened during that time. So in terms of how security has done, I feel as a civilian, I'll speak from a civilian angle, there's so much that we need to talk about that we feel also the ruling junta has failed to listen to when civilians are speaking their voice. Security forces have been largely monopolized to perform a certain duty that is not towards civilians. I think we have to be honest. We feel they are performing a duty for someone who's not civilians at this point. So if we are talking about how they are performing...
Do you have incidents?
Well, majority of the time they're on the streets trying to curb down opposition activities. Just the other day they were arresting NUP members just around the corner. You know, that's what we've known security for. That's what we've known UPDF for beating people on the streets, for torturing, for kidnapping. If you ask me in my generation what I know about UPDF and the security forces, that's what I'm going to tell you. Because this other thing telling me there's a road where you're putting people to choose in between. Perhaps I'll choose going to UPDF because out of the fear and the trauma of what has been instilled on Ugandans, they're very traumatized. So in that incident, it's fear. It's not even you're picking the right thing to go to. It is coming from a point of fear and trauma. Uganda needs healing. Secondly,
is there any single achievement that you would perhaps mention and say, okay, by and large, at least we can credit them for doing A or B?
I'll take that achievement out of Uganda. They have done some work in terms of regional and global influence. They've done some work on that front, and I feel it's become one of our biggest exports, at least what we are majorly known for. Well, on top of that, we have so many other things we could be talking about in terms of that strategy, but I feel it has been our biggest export, right? Security has been our biggest export. But when it comes back to ground or domestic issues, there's so much that we can talk about that we feel security forces have failed to achieve for the people. They're traumatized because of how much violence the security forces have infiltrated on the people. So we cannot even talk about security in our homes. We can't talk about security on the road. We talk about security where we are when we're not feeling safe. What is the state of being safe?
I wanted to also add that, okay, not just to add, but also to emphasize that the people you want to put on the spot come from our families, come from our societies. Is it now a specific blame to those that employ them or to you people that push them to join the force? So you send to UPDF indisciplined brothers and sisters.
It has to go from the ruling party and who they've employed to the individuals themselves. There has to be individual accountability. You cannot feel okay beating someone almost senseless on the street and you feel fine as a person and you go home and it's business as usual. If you have a family, then why aren't you thinking about that family when you're beating someone else's child, when you're beating someone else's family member? Where is that humanity? Where is that humanity? At a certain point, and I think this has been mentioned in media even before, that we need to start holding them individually accountable for these acts of violence. Because at a certain point, we're not able to reach Museveni, whose ears where you can pull. They are the individuals we are seeing. They're the ones beating us. I was arrested in 2016 for protesting against the removal of age limit. I was thrown on that truck like a chicken on those police trucks. So who do I hold accountable? I'm not going to find Museveni on the street.
You were disturbing peace as established by Honorable Wee.
I still remember some of the faces of the people who arrested me. And to me, if I could get them, I would take them to court. They should be held accountable. So that by the time we reach the top leadership structures, we're also holding them accountable at that level. But even as individuals, you should be held accountable. Your job shouldn't protect you anymore.
Okay. That's Yvonne Pambara, a presidential aspirant. I hope you won't turn into a dictator in the event that you're president, because you seem angry.
No, we are frustrated.
UPC, the Congress of the People, maybe precisely begin with what transpired in court, because we had thought that you'd come with some good news, but the way, by look of things, like you are grieving. Proceed, sir. What transpired in court, then we shall, of course, answer this very one. But precisely, the public would want to know what transpired in court.
Thank you. No, obviously, I'm grieving. I'm grieving for this country that we are discussing a constitution that was fudged in the name of the peoples of the Republic of Uganda, a 30-year-old constitution which has been broken in a manner that is unprecedented. I didn't want to use the strong word, when you actually abuse, that is terrible. But if the Constitution is the national document that should be respected, then I don't know which institution in the Republic of Uganda works. I've been told the nearest public organization that has a semblance of work is the National Waters and Sewage Corporation, but simply because it makes profit. But that said, I know 3 villages away from where I live, where a lady friend of mine, together with nearly 100 families, lived without water somewhere near Kisasi, because some dubious NRA general and associates were refurbishing a block of flats and sealed off the road, cut off water, and people lived without water for over 2 weeks. So if that is anything to be celebrated, I really don't know. So having gone to court on a matter of a judicial review that, as I understand it, flanked by lawyers, should have been disposed of within 6 months. It's taken 4 years and now 5 coming to 6 months. Obviously, I did not get the ruling that we expected, but I dare say that the judge before whom the matter is a lady justice. And I wish we possibly had slightly more of her. Not necessarily that I was happy today, but she seems to have been the most proactive of the 4 judges who've handled my one case. But in any case, the matter is been adjourned, and we expect to get something slightly much more substantive next Tuesday.
Okay.
But that tells you of a broken system, and possibly a system in which our monies should be going to invest in the judicial process and judicial system. Our monies should go towards investments in mediations and otherwise, and building institutions and systems, rather than building dubious men and women in organizations who play politics of impunity as they so wish. I have had sight of a commentator who was trying to make a defense case on behalf of NUP people when they're being accused of not doing well in the recent election processes. And this particular individual said that, how could you blame this political organization when the people from whom they should be learning is NRA, and these are guys who've been the last 40 years. So meaning that all the leadership of NUP, as my young sister here is suggesting, they can't learn from Mr. Museveni, who breaks his own document. They can't learn from Chigongo, whose position cannot be elective. They can't learn from Mr. Museveni's son, who's a decent, handsome young man, but who's a CDF, but uses his ex-handle to do almost some of the things that only Trump could do. We can't think about his mother, who's the Minister for Education, and we know what happens in Makere. My used to be seat of academic conservatism. So we could go on and on. But that said, on this NRA constitution,
I wanted to highlight this for you to guide your answer, Mr. Ocheno, because not somewhere, but here I read, recognizing our struggles against forces of tyranny, oppression, exploitation.
Bambi.
And he says, these are Ugandans.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course,
completely misled Ugandans.
one of their ambassadors is here with us. Was your army a tyrant army?
I've never had an army.
Oppressing people and exploiting them.
I've never had an army. I am.
No, I mean UPC army. It's what I refer to, because given this constitution, it's what we are referring to.
I know what you're asking me,
Yeah.
so allow me to answer it. UPC has never had a national army, but UPC has been decent enough to rescue the likes of the Musevenis by founding a military organization in Tanzania, around all of whom they mobilized and organized and managed to take away the tyrant of Idi Amin. UPC did that, and had UPC not done it, Museveni knows it, they need to clap for us. So there was a military organization called Kikosi Maalum. But by the Moshi Unity Conference, we did not have a UPC army. We had a national army, National Liberation Army, that included NRA and included the likes of Kagame's and others. Did Kagame join? Yeah, those guys. So we had a UNLA. So UNLA was not a UPC army, it was a national army. Museveni's brother and all these people, the Katumbas, all this, so UPC has never had an army. The 60s army,
sure,
I'll answer you. The UPC's, the 1960s government was a democratic government. UPC took over the national army. Idi Amin was not a creation of UPC. I mean, what Dr. Bedi tried to help Idi Amin and others to govern on your behalf. So we've never had a personal army. But if you talk about the 60s army, and you talk about the army, the national army, twice under Milton Obote and under UPC, I am younger than Mr. Museveni, but old enough to have lived through, I was born in the 60s, I saw bits of Idi Amin in primary school and about it too. I don't remember some of the things which are associated with the previous armies except Idi Amin's army, one. Number two, I don't see any association with the previous armies except the interim UNLA, which Museveni was its Minister of Defense in the interim between 1979 and 80. And I do not see of any army pulling Mabatis except the Okello army, which was Okello, Kaira, the bunch of DP guys, and the Musevenis who overthrew the democratically elected government. I do not.
How would you compare the Amin's army of 8 years
Amazingly,
compared to NRA?
amazingly, I told and I think I better say it here. I told an international agency that some of the things that NRA has done, Amin's killed. Amin killed my era member of parliament and minister for local government, James Ochola. Amin killed my father's godson, who was a soldier in Barara. Amin killed many people. But Amin never occupied villages. Amin soldiers never burnt livestock. Amin soldiers never poisoned water wells. What NRA is not alleged, what NRA on record has done, what NRA did in Acholi, what NRA did in Teso, what NRA did in parts of Lango, what NRA did even in Luwero, where me as president, and I hope my presidential colleague here we can have a commitment that in the likely event that any of us become national presidents, we shall seek for a National Truth and Reconciliation Commission so that we don't dump these NRA guys in Luzira, but we have a genuine investigation in terms of what NRA did in Luwero. So in all those cases, including the Luwero skulls, which are contested but unresolved, I don't know how many of them are put to the Amin thing. But I didn't expect that I would be coming to take this line, but since it's an introductory line, I think we better deal with it. What NRA did, including in Mukura, yeah, I don't recognize Amin's army there. But Amin's army was terrible. Who fought them and defeated them? Does that make sense? So that said, this NRA constitution here is an NRA document, it's not a national document. These are lawyers and historians. I don't know any national constitution, Yvonne, anywhere in the world that was promulgated in the absence of political parties. I don't know any constituent assembly anywhere, including CODESA, Conference for Democratic South Africa in the early 90s, that was CA delegated when political parties are tied in the back. This is an NRA document, you guys. 30 years of NRA document. Let me conclude.
I wanted to give you some
so
insight.
the Constituent Assembly was a composition of Ugandans. That may have included people from a UPC background, but clearly it was a Museveni document designed, and the nonsense about tyranny is a nonsense. Because when they talk about the past, unless they talk about some of the things that the Musevenis were doing, including chasing away youth at City Square, Yvonne. Museveni, in 1979, no lule, no work. People were wagoned, you know, and safe-housed in protest against use of lule. And you can go on and on. So these guys did that. So my hope was that when these NRA guys came from the bushes, you know, at least they needed to have left the constitution, but they wanted to legitimize themselves and so claim the constitution. And finally, the most crude thing of this Museveni constitution was an extreme insult by creating Article 269 of the NRA constitution, which banned the political party operations. And so this Museveni constitution that you guys are celebrating, whoever's celebrating it, you know, I say it's provided under a quote, you know, Article 269, that existing political parties, namely Uganda People's Congress, DP, CP, and Chiki, them, they're UPM. That Museveni you mentioned, UPM, they were pushed in a base, and so therefore they can't hold. They can't hold party. They can't have branch meetings, hold party conferences, elect leaders, participate in elections, and there is a clause E, which says, and they should not do any other such thing that may be deemed in law, deemed in the Constitution to interfere with the current movement political system currently in force. My foot. That document, you put it in the Constitution, and some October day, you go to Fort Portal, and you clap, boom, 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 using my money that, oh, we've liberated the people of Uganda. No. This document is one of the biggest national tragedies. And let me conclude that for these lawyers, 1962 Constitution, that was amended, okay, for 1962 Constitution, as existed.
Okay.
Yeah. All that the Musevenis and their bunch needed to do was to say, we amend the current Constitution. In any case, I think it was sworn in under the 1967 Constitution. So you just do a Constitution amendment. Or we are going to go back to 1962 and continue with it. They wasted our money. We fundamentally opposed it. I opposed it today. It's an error document. Okay. 66 Constitution, so-called pigeonhole. No,
the pigeonhole. Why do you call it so-called?
Because it was a draft. It was a draft constitution
that was put
in
September,
and Parliament debated it. And what Parliament? Elected Parliament, the first elected Parliament debated and approved 1966 Constitution and the 1967 Constitution. Now, granted, people, including the witches, they were taught and they were taught history. Kata history professors told them that. Yvonne, maybe it's the first time you're hearing this. Oh, it was Kata done. You guys know. 66 and 67 Constitution were as adopted by the elected democratic parliament of the Republic of Uganda. Whether or not we like the content or the outcome is a different thing. See, this one here, no, it's a Luwero Bush Constitution.
And then I come back to Honorable Awich. In your heart of hearts, is there any slight mistake, constitutional mistake, that you find or consider as a blunder or otherwise back in the day, especially in the government of Milton Obote?
The one thing that Milton Obote regretted was not anything constitutional. The one thing in his two administrations, and he told Andrew Mender, was the outcome of the 1966 event.
The crisis
yes.
attack on...
yes, it was not attack, because the three of you are lawyers, so let me give you responses. Lubiri was not attacked. There was a response. Police officers unarmed went to investigate arms in Lubiri. These are for the record. They were shot at. Armed police response went in and they attacked. Exchange of fire continued. The army went as a last resort. Granted, the situation got out of hand, and nobody regrets that. So that is not. So that
Did he
one.
ever provide the alternative? His wishes on
as a lawyer, you need to allow the person you ask to give you a holistic response. And because a very important thing, and adding historical context to this, and for me, my desperate situation is that I want younger people like this coming onto national polity to pick from a foundation and run with the future, because it's not about pinning people on the wall. So, regrets. I think a Muganda friend of mine who's a Republican, and completely agrees with the events of 1966 in context of government and 1967, ever asked me this, and is abroad, and I still ask. Unfortunately, what I had read that, I said, look, the thing that you call old Milton did, and the government, was to have abolished all kingdoms. And he was laughing, abolished all kingdoms. So because the contest was between Buganda Kingdom and central government. And then, since then, I've been asking myself that what mode would it take? Obviously, I went into to defend from UP's perspective that, it was not going to be sustainable that you say you abolish Buganda Kingdom and then you leave the others. So from a constitutional perspective, could we have done something else to manage the question of the kingdoms, as it were? Beyond that, I really don't know anything else. And I can tell you that time has told us, after 40 years right now, we are looking at 40 years of a mess. And in any case, the Yvonne's now anxiously looking for what is it that Museveni has given them as a foundation for them to build their future.
Okay. Our viewers, we're still moving through, and I want to believe that every single submissions as by end of the three, you can, you save, and you can even go ahead and read through what is already on paper to prove on whether or not any of the three is lying the other. or telling the truth? Because you see, we I mean, we have a lot of
In
information.
UPC, we don't tell lies, and these are lawyers. They're unlikely to tell
we have
lies.
a lot
I'm
of
defending
information
them.
on them. And as you made your submissions, there is a way how Honorable Awich was trying to, put on paper everything. And I hope he wants, it's like he wants to respond to every, that thing of lawyers. On issue this, he responds.
Comrade Rich has got a job because he's going to speak on behalf of NRM. Yeah, sure enough.
What
Yes.
Mr. Ocheno and Yvonne Mpambara, of course, Yvonne puts it on to you that UPDF isn't as different. Mr. Ocheno puts it on record that what this document isn't even Ugandan's document. It is simply a making of your commander-in-chief. Do you want to respond on whether it is true? You can also share and feel free to say, I now realize. Mr. Ocheno is correct.
Thank you. Now, about my response, my notes, taking notes and response, I do it deliberately for two main reasons. One is that as a disciplined NRA cadre, I don't want to interfere with the flow.
And a diplomat.
I don't want to interfere with the flow of somebody's submission.
Presidential candidate.
That's why I have a pen and a notebook. But if you want me to start being indisciplined and interfering, then I can do it. I can do it. I can start interfering.
You maintain the
I don't want.
the
I
diplomacy.
want you to take like there's a common joke in our area. For a long time we were communal society, so we didn't have every person eating with his or her own plate. Would put sauce here and the food descent, so people would share. And normally they would pick disciplined children to eat with visitors. And I can assure you, I was such a child.
You were a beneficiary.
I was always on loan by other families
No,
to eat with their visitors.
Where's the evidence? Tell us, young man.
Especially Bakos who used to come to marry in my village.
This young Awich come and eat with our guests?
Let me tell you, whenever people go to marry in my villages, when I was young, the mothers-in-law would borrow me. They would take me on loan to go and eat with them because I was so disciplined. But there was this story where a child was told to eat with a visitor. And the visitor had started to scoop and pick big pieces.
Chunk,
So the boy said, visitor, for me, I'm also terrible at this thing. But mommy told me to eat with you. Well. So don't think I can
do the same.
No, I can do it worse. But I'm restrained by mommy to eat with you well. So please take care. Now, if you think my taking notes is a weakness, I start interfering, then I can't do it.
You can also take
I can't be disciplined, but I do it for that. So one reason is to be disciplined, but also to make sure that I take time to respond. Because we had a similar situation in some discussion where somebody was saying, why would I discuss somebody's point? I should present mine. I said, come on, look. Uganda Communication Commission in their guidelines said, when you are inviting, balance the views, right? Invite the Congress, invite the president here and what, so that you balance. Why do they do? So that we have views, chance to respond. Secondly, you guys, lawyers, affidavit that is not rebutted is presumed to be accepted. Now, this colleague thought that he would go and talk on NRM, including calling for regime change. And he expects that when I come to talk, I talk about Arsenal and Man U, the fish in the lake, and the leopard in the national park. And I leave what he has talked, including calling for a regime change. How? I come and I say, no, you have talked about regime change and everything. But however, my point here is Man U and Arsenal, and then, no. Uganda Communication Commission makes us hear so that we interchange and we reply to things that are needed. And so my writing is for the purpose. Now, therefore, I will just go briefly before I go to your question on what my colleagues have said. For example, Madam President, I can say that, is wondering why we mention history. And I think in this particular discussion, this historical aspect came on a question of his own. So if you're complaining about me or NRM saying history, then tell him not to. He said he was reading from the Constitution the past tyranny. So it is emotion moved by him, not me, and therefore I had to reply. So it is him, and if it is not brought, I wouldn't have brought the comparison. But also that we all know the importance of history. We can't predict the future without comparing the past. Nobody lives in its glorious darkness. The importance of history, and that is why it is nearly, even under UNESCO, which controls the global education system, UNESCO insists on learning history. Even against countries which insist on sciences as opposed to arts. Because without history, we can't do further. So I want to say that. Madam President also says that the only things he knows about UPDF is violence and arrest and all that. Maybe because you are young once again. But I would like to tell you that UPDF is known for many things. What is it in Luganda? They said at least we sleep at night. Yes, that is one thing known by NRM is known for. People say they sleep. People were not sleeping. People sleep. And that is why, therefore, I wonder that you said they will lack security. No. Even you, who is an aspirant, whatever you say here, I can guarantee you drive home and you will sleep. And that is the beauty of NRM. There is no threat.
Incidents where people haven't slept after they have gotten out
that
of
is
that
after some bridge.
It's not guaranteed.
Now, you see, I sometimes I restrain myself to the stories of the past. Did you know, Norman, that they were telling us that there are characters in UNLA who would come and steal prisoners or steal detainees? You wake up in the morning and you are checking on people who have been detained. They said, so and so stole them. Stole them not to release them, but stole them and killed. Can you imagine? Security or person who is not even connected comes and steals the prisoners and kills. Say, Mr. So-and-so came last night and stole 3 and killed. Really?
But
anyway.
Have you had the incidents where SFC, for instance, gone to CPS and picked people?
Yeah, I've heard.
Okay, proceed.
Yes. True, a security official can be... Madam President was again wondering whether or not she can... because he says he recalls the name of the people who arrested her. And she was wondering whether or not she can take them to court. You're a lawyer, you should. Reason being, in the government attempts to enforce human rights, there's a law called Human Rights Enforcement Act. Human Rights Enforcement Act, madam, says if a police officer or an army comes to arrest you and breaks your leg, you can hold that person personally liable for the violation. In the past, there was a defense of Attorney General. An officer who does that would plead that, sure, Attorney General, me, I was doing my work. But these days, the defense of Attorney General is not sustainable. So I'm wondering, as a lawyer, why you are still asking whether you should try to take them personally. You can, and the law provides for that. The defense of Attorney General no longer is sustainable. You break somebody's leg, you are not going to hide that I was doing work for government. I was doing work for Attorney General, therefore sue Attorney General. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. Wonder no more. Know that you have a right to take them to court personally. Finally, Congress was saying, is wondering whether UPC could have abolished the Buganda Kingdom and left the rest. It is possible. Why not? Let me tell you, in the current constitutional drafting, it says the kingdom is desired as by people so wish. You may wish to know that Ankole Kingdom was a very strong kingdom, and that's where Museveni comes from. Is it there? So, maybe UPC did not stretch their mind to think deep. It is possible, depending on how you draft the law accordingly. A current constitutional dispensation says a community can have their traditional or whatever, if the people so wish. And the people of Ankole not so wish. Is it there? So please, next time Congress in power, think deep and get a solution. So it is possible it was possible to have abolished a kingdom and sustain others. It is possible now that there are kingdom in other places except Ankole.
I'm calling for a break.
We're not go, certainly we'll do so, but not go to the bush.
I'm calling for a break briefly. Of course, we'll come back shortly, like in a minute or so. And once we come back, we shall open our phone calls so that whoever is interested in calling and asking any question, you'd call in. Of course, as soon as we come back. Don't go away.